Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we work on Django apps. We're going to continue to do that. And tonight we're working on a totally new feature area of the product that doesn't exist, is totally unrelated to the different kinds of features that exist in the product today, which is a homeschool application, and should be for enabling growth, like a tool to allow people to adopt the platform, share it with others, hoping for some kind of virality ultimately, but just a way to share and for customers to get benefit out of that. So that's the plan today. We're actually going to start with some design stuff before we get into that. I don't know how far we'll get. We'll probably get through the database model is my hope, and maybe be thinking about what design elements are going to be in there. Before we do that, though, I want to thank those that support me on Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/mblehman, you can support me financially if you're finding the content that's here valuable to you. And I want to thank Rupert, Andrew, Patrick, Eric, Philip, Miguel, and a new patron of Peter. Thank you all for your contributions. It really helps. I do stuff for the community. I try to spend some of the money on things that I think support the Django community, like podcasts and stuff. And your contributions help me make that not come directly out of my pocket, which is really awesome. So I'm really grateful. You're also able to ask me anything. Oh, hey, Shivens93, welcome. You're able to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. And as we're going through the design process, I'm happy to take tangents and go on other adventures. If you're catching this later on YouTube and you like what you see, please like or leave a comment. I think that helps other people find the content, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. I do respond to comments and answer questions and stuff. So if that's you and you have a question about what you find, let me know. Okay, let's look at this. So what are we doing? Part of the app. Hey, Felix Moreno, welcome. Part of the application that I'm building, and as a reminder, if you haven't seen this before, this is a homeschool application that I'm building for my family. In fact, you can see the app live today. It's at theschooldesk.app. And it's an application that I'm building for my spouse to help manage the our homeschool here. I've got 2 kids. And I will get to your front-end question in just a minute, Shivans. And this is the product that I have. And it works. It does what my spouse needs for the school year, and I'm going to add features to it over time. But at the basic levels, it's got what it needs. And so I'm now kind of turning my attention more to how do I market this thing? And then once I have done some marketing, how can the customers themselves become advocates for the tool if they like what they see and want to share with other homeschool families, because those are likely people that they know in their communities. How can they do that? So the way that I have in mind to do that is with a referral program. If someone wants to refer a friend, they can submit their email address. I can send that person an email, or the service can, and thank you, appreciate that. I can send that person an email, and if that person eventually signs up themselves and becomes a paying customer, my idea is to give back to the person who did the referral, in terms of a discount to their service, a couple months off of the pay service, because it is not a free app out there. So we're going to look at the design of that and get into that. But before I do that, I want to get to Shivan's questions here. How are you handling the front end of the product? JavaScript? So this entire application is written with Django templates. So it is a server-side rendered application instead of a single-page app. So it's not an SPA. And I don't have anything against SPAs, to be really clear. I use them at work, and my company does Django at work too. So there's definitely multiple modes. But as a one-person project, I have found that this kind of stuff is best handled in one place. And for me, that's Django, because that's the toolset that I'm comfortable with. In terms of look and feel, so there's a couple elements that go into front end, right? There's the actual design stuff. So the actual layout and everything that I'm using there is using Tailwind CSS. Tailwind CSS is a utility-based framework. It's really grown in popularity. It's a little bit counterintuitive of what you do. You add a lot of little CSS classes to make your components, and so that turns people off initially. And so other people would think like, well, I'll just use a Bootstrap component that has specific Tailwind, specific CSS classes for the thing that I'm trying to do. But there are definitely upsides to using Tailwind. You stay in the HTML. You don't have to write CSS yourself. It's pretty awesome. So that's the look and feel of the service. And then when it comes to page renders, so there's full page renders on each page. We can go into the app and we can click around, and this is my own account, and I've got buttons here. Actually, we should probably switch over to not the real app so that we can make modifications. But I'll start that up so we can see it on localhost. And what port is it on? It's not on 1313, it's on 5000, I think. There we go. So here we are on localhost, same site, all the same content, because I'm constantly pushing out the new changes. So every page that you see here, and I'll log in with the testing account that I've got locally, is done with server render pages in Django, as I said. But there are areas that I use more dynamic stuff. And when I use that more dynamic stuff, I have been lately reaching for HTMX. So if you check out, I believe it's htmx.org. Yeah. It is a way to do JavaScript kind of stuff that you might have done in the past with jQuery if you've been a developer for years. But you can do it directly in markup. So you can see here's an AJAX query for a post request to this URL endpoint, and it does some stuff. So that's my toolbox. So the combination of Django templates and Tailwind and HTMX for when I need to do more dynamic stuff. And I try really hard to avoid doing very dynamic stuff. I just haven't found it to be necessary for the user experience that I'm going for. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question there, Shivas93. Let's get back to this referral idea. Yep, those are the three. So where I like to start with designs is often at the data model layer, and I like to start here because it helps me think about what pieces of data are going to be in this flow to make this particular process work. And so let me sketch out maybe in this issue area. I really need like a better sketching tool to share when I'm designing. But let me sketch out what I think this idea is going to look like. So in the app right now, we have all these dedicated tabs that are dedicated to specific functionality related to schools. I don't want to jam in referrals because I think that would be a pretty nasty experience. It has, it's something valuable to a person potentially, but it shouldn't be in their face. I don't want to be like that. So my thought is in the settings area of the application, which is very simple right now. You can see it really has almost nothing in it. This billing stuff, if I was a certain different account type, would actually link out to Stripe's dashboard billing, so there'd only be a link here. So there's not much here, but I'm thinking of putting at the bottom like a referral block or something to say like with a big call to action of, hey, you are a school desk user and you like it, so awesome. I'm glad you're aboard. Share it with your friends. That kind of idea. And so the flow would be maybe a link to the documentation explaining the nitty-gritty of what I think this arrangement would be like for someone who's doing referral. What do they get? I would try and pitch the benefit in the call to action here. But the simplified version of it is I would want to have a place for an email address and then a submit button. And that submit button would create a referral, and the referral would be added to the database, and it would also send out an email to the person they were referring. In that flow, if that person who receives the referral email will have a specialized link that will help them get signed up, and if they sign up, I could connect the dots that say like, oh, this user who referred you and this email address that you signed up with are a match. If there's a trial system in School Desk, so it's not a guarantee of some kind of discount. So I'm trying to avoid, I've been thinking through like, are there ways that people could cheat the system? And there probably are. I don't want to overthink it. I want to keep this design simple enough to get the feature out there without spending a year on it. But the thought process is, when that person who signs up, who was referred, finishes their trial and actually converts, so they become a school desk user as well, actual paying customer, then the referral benefits would kick into the referrer. Hopefully that process makes sense. And I know using referrer and referred and all of those terms can get a little confusing. And I'm going to actually try and avoid those terms in the modeling itself, because I have an arrangement at work, and I can't go into too much details about the model naming and stuff, but we have a scenario where a pairing of people has a letter difference, like referrer and referred, but some other domain, healthcare. And the only difference that you ever see in the code is that single letter at the end is changing. And I can tell you, having worked with code like that it's a real pain in the rear to do. So I'm going to try and pick terms that disambiguate that a little, or separate those a little bit more clearly whenever naming that we pick. So that's the basic idea. I just talked through that. I probably should have written it out, but in short, it's going to be a call to action on the settings page, an email to the referred, to the person receiving the referral, and I don't even know if it matters to let the customer might want to see their referrals. Customer see list of referrals. I don't know. That sounds kind of like, who cares? Maybe they want to eventually, but I'm not sure. Yeah, naming variables is really hard. That's one of the hardest problems in software design, right? It's like picking appropriate names that have meaning, because many people can make code, make a computer do something, but code is often about the communication process to other individuals. And perhaps in my scenario for this project, that communication is to viewers like yourself, but it's primarily to me in the future as like the person who has to really maintain this code. So I want to not be confusing myself in the future. So we've got the call to action on the settings page, with a form that takes an email address, and the person receives a referral. We may not want this. This might be like overkill. In fact, the more I think about it, I don't think I want to put this in the initial thing that is the requirements for this. So I don't think people need to see their list of referrals. If somebody complains about that in the future, that would be a trivial thing to add. It would be a list view of the referral model, which would not be hard. So what else do we need? So the person doing the sign up, they don't even need like a special sign up process. I might, no, I don't think I need to specialize at all. As long as they sign up with the same email address, there should be a connection that is established there. So there's nothing special to add there. And then, so the last thing to like close the loop is when a person converts, the person who did the referral should get a discount. Now, it's totally possible for me to go hog wild with this feature. I mean, you could imagine every bit of this being automated. I'm not going to do that though. I have in the application, I have my own spouse, but I do have a paying customer, which is really awesome. I was excited about that the other day on Twitter. It was the first time that one of my apps has actually made revenue on something that I completely put together, which is really fun. But there's not like this big flood of people. And this referral system doesn't exist either. So if I was to, thank you. Appreciate that. If I was to extrapolate today and say my one paying customer did referrals, then I can imagine maybe 2 or 3 of that person's friends who got the referrals converting, perhaps, if they were really pleased. And so the prospect of making a whole system that automatically creates the discounts that are going to be applied to the person who is doing the referral, their account, I think what I really need in the system, instead of going that whole extra mile, is a way to notify myself that, hey, a person converted. And frankly, at this early stage, I have a Slack channel of when somebody signs up, when somebody starts paying me, I know who they are. And I don't know who they are, sorry. I know their username, I know their email, so I have some notion of an identity of somebody signed up. So I think that there is going to be enough knowledge there for me to not have to wire up everything automatically. Now, if the service becomes way more popular and the referral system becomes way more popular, then of course I would go and take the things that I would do manually and convert them into something automated. But I think this is an important lesson, and one of the things that I learned from my last project is not everything has to be bulletproof. Like, if I'm at an early stage, a referral process is useful for this, but it doesn't have to be gold-plated, and I'm trying my best to avoid that temptation. So I think these 3 things should be enough. These are the things that need to happen. And the signal to me here of what the person gets a discount, that's going to be a process step that I'll follow and figure out how to actually apply those discounts in the Stripe dashboard. But I need some signal that they converted. So all that is the context for what do we do? And what do we need to have? So what needs to be tracked? We need, for certain, the customer who's doing the referral, the customer who's submitting the form to send an email to somebody with a given email address. So that needs to be captured of, what is that person's foreign key? Because we need to be able to credit them later that they're the one who did the referral. We want to track, I'm thinking I want to track the created date, because my spouse pointed out to me, as I asked her about this idea and what she thought about it, and she said something intelligent, and she's quite intelligent, so that's good on her, that what happens if, user A, or Susie, let's give these people names. Susie does a referral to Pam, and Pam doesn't actually sign up for the service. And then Pam moves to Arizona. And then Jane, later on, also is a school desk user and also then refers Pam. And finally, Pam then signs up based on Jane's referral, not Susie's. Hopefully you kept track of those names. In that scenario, who gets the credit for the referral? So by having a notion of a created date, I'll better be able to track who, if there's a temporal difference, who should get that. So it's an easy piece of information to track early, and I'm just going to do that. And then finally, I was thinking there might be some kind of status about these referrals, just to have some notion of what state it's in. So I might do something like pending. So if we're thinking about this as a flow of states, the initial created step, you haven't done anything with it. So it's kind of it's either pending or initial. But pending, I like pending as a starting point, kind of indicating it has something that it needs to do and it's not done yet. And I've used that on a different model, so I'm going to kind of stick with that. The other thing that needs to happen with this is sent. So we're going to send an email. So that's the action that's going to come out of that. So I think that's something good to do. And then finally, the only other state that I think that I might really care about is a converted or something like that. the notion of this is like a starting state. Here's an in progress state, and this is a terminal or end state. And I think that those three states would represent the flow. That this is not a complicated flow. It's never intended to be, but it would show the complete life cycle of a referral. And then maybe in the future there's an expiration or something like that. So we might do an expired, but I don't need that for now. There's nobody in the system that's going to be making super heavy use of this, so that's not really necessary. Okay, and then I was thinking that perhaps the referrals should have some kind of unique identifier, but I don't think that's really necessary either. Because my initial thought was to make a specialized sign-up link to send them in the referral email, but I don't really see a lot of value in that because they can sign up through the registration process. Hold on a minute. Trying to block this user who's obviously spamming this channel. All right, there we go. So, yeah, where was I? So, like, I think this is the kind of minimal system that we need. So I think, excuse me. I think this captures what's required for this feature. Now, I want to go ahead and add to this milestone of the pieces that are going to be there that will be required, and they are this call to action. So we have a milestone already that we can put these issues in for the three main components of what's needed for this feature. So we'll take the call to action. I'll just take them straight from these bullets and submit that issue. I don't know what I'm going to put in there yet. That's okay. The next thing is the email, the actual email to send. So there's some email design stuff there. And then the signal of marking somebody as converted. Yeah. Those are the main components. So now we have our small little feature here. This is not intended to be huge, but it's enough to start, I think. So let's get started. Let's get into some code. To begin, I'm going to make a new app. So here are the existing applications. Wow, what just happened there? Okay. So the existing applications in this app are in this homeschool directory. We have the accounts core, courses, notifications, schools, students. So all of these apps don't have anything to do with referrals. I might argue that this is account related functionality. There's a case for that, but that does kind of muddy the waters of what is accounts. I feel like accounts should be exclusively about the account. Like, let's look at the account models, like what's in there, and give you an idea. So there's an account model that tracks the status of a particular account, and it's really about is the user active? Have they paid anything? Or like all of that stuff. And it's hooked up to Stripe. And so I don't really want to mix that up, I don't think. So I think what I really want is a new app, a new Django app. So we're going to create one. And we're going to create one because, like I said, I want to start with the model. So I need a place to put that model. So we'll use the manage command and we'll say start app. And I'm going to call it Referrals. I don't want to make the mistake that the HTTP spec did, so I'm going to make sure I spell referrals right. I'm pretty positive that's it, but yeah, because the HTTP spec has referrer, and I know it's not quite the same thing, but I think they use one R, well, 3 R's instead of 4. Yeah, so there's a typo in the header name. Anyway, that's sort of a tangent, but let's get the spelling right. We've got referrals. And I'm gonna hit enter. And so that'll have created a directory in this top level directory, which is not where I want it. I take all of my Django apps and I put them underneath the homeschool directory to keep all of the Django code, or at least a lot of it, more contained, because there's a bunch of other things in here, and if I also had all of the different Django apps at this level, I think it would be too many directories and it would get overwhelming. So let's move the referrals directory inside of the homeschool directory. Whoops, not remove, move. Okay. So now we've got the referrals app in there, and let's go look inside of it for a minute. And I actually need to as we're doing this, I need to look at something else, because I remember there was a weird, yeah, okay. So we'll bring up referrals app. Oh, interesting. So this is so I'm now on Django 3.2, and since I created a new app, they're switching the auto field so that all models will automatically use this big auto field rather than the standard auto field, which is a difference in size of how many you can have. And we need to change this to be homeschool referrals for reasons that have to do with module importing and loading. Because I told you I moved it under a homeschool directory, when Django loads, it's trying to find the right path, and it needs to give the path that I can see to the actual code from a Python packaging perspective. Okay, so that's step 1. And then the next bit I want to do is I always like to go ahead and delete the tests file. Because I like to replace it with a tests directory. And we're going to write some tests in a bit. So let's make this a package with an init file. So now we've got an empty test directory. In a moment, I'm going to want to generate a factory. So we'll make a factories file as well. That will be useful in a minute. And what else could we do? I need to make a new models diagram eventually. So let's go to the make file that I have. And we're going to add referrals to this list. So QRS. We're going to put referrals here. And that should be all good. And then the final bit that we need to do is we need to go into the project settings. And we need to add this app to the list of apps. So here are all of my Django apps and the installed apps settings. And we're going to come down to the bottom. And again, I'm going to alphabetize because that's my nature. And we'll add referrals to this list of apps. Okay. Now, I know there's some other auto formatting stuff and things that are in here. So we're going to add all these files, and I'm going to try and commit it. And I'm going to do that because I want my pre-commit checks to run and automatically format things. So black, where you can see There's some failures here. There's some things we need to clean out. I'm surprised black passed. That's very interesting. Maybe there were no quote marks. I figured it would have failed. But I guess that's not the case. So let's close the settings. We don't need that. I'll let PyTest run over here while we're working on more stuff. I want to make sure just the tests run now that the app is in there. The app's not doing anything, but for completeness, we will use the admin in a minute once we make a model, so we don't need to delete that yet. And we'll also use this models thing in a minute. We're not making any views today, and I want to be able to commit this. Let's get rid of the render function here. Okay. So next, what are we doing? Let's do some test-driven development. So let's go here. We're going to go and make the test models py. And I'm going to bring in from homeschool test, import the base test case class that I use for all of these things. And we see the tests pass, so that's good. So I want to test the referral. That's going to be the test case. This is the model that we want. And the test that I want to make is I want to test a factory method. So I want to be able to use a factory. I use factories extensively in my test code to make tests and make quick user data. And I want to be able to follow that pattern. So usually the way I drive these out is by creating a test factory test that all it does is make sure that if I don't provide any parameters to a factory, that it will always produce a valid instance of that type. So we're going to say Referral Factory, which I know doesn't exist yet. And then we're going to assert that the referral what should we call that first parameter? Should it just be user? Or that's probably not clear enough. So we've said we need a foreign key to the user, but that's not good enough. So I want to say the referral referring user, maybe. It's a little bit more explicit than, or it uses two words. I guess it's not more explicit. What I don't want to do is say referral referrer. I think that just reads horribly. I think it'll be clearer to say referring user. So let's try running this, and it's going to blow up in my face because it doesn't have a factory yet. Why did that format so funky? What is going on? Whoa, that's so weird. All right, I think my terminal thinks it's stuck at a weird size. Let's try running PyTest here. Oh, that's so strange. No, no, no. All right, stop. 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 Why can I not kill this? Okay, not sure why I couldn't even terminate a process. Something strange is going on with that terminal. Get out of here. How about now? There it is. Okay, that's much better looking. I can read this output. Okay, you can see that we have the one failing test there because, again, that factory isn't there. Now I want to go back. So I want to be able to run these tests from within the actual Vim instance, but I couldn't even read the output because something weird happened. So we need to bring in a new factory. So we're going to say from homeschool referrals tests factories, that file that we created just a moment ago. And again, we're going to try and use a referral factory. Now this doesn't exist yet, right? So let's go make it. And I use Factory Boy, which is the app that does factory creation stuff. And factories is a really cool pattern. So if you haven't encountered factories before, factories make DB data for tests. They're pretty sweet. So we can import factory and do, oh man, let me not try and fake. I know how to do this, but I always forget the format that I use. Yeah, okay, there it is. So we're gonna do class, then we get our referral factory, and it is a factory, Django model factory. And we have to give it a meta class that tells us which model it is. And so we're gonna point it at the referrals and referral. So again, I'm doing test-driven development here. This model doesn't exist yet. So even though we have a factory and we can save this, I can now run this thing and it's still gonna blow up on me. It's still gonna say like, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as a referral. So that's exactly what happened. The app referrals does not have a referral model. So we're now in a position to go back to the referrals models file. Whoa. There we go. And we're going to create the new model. So let's do this. We'll say class referral, and it's going to subclass from models.model. And let's give it a docstring. A referral allows customers to share school desk with others. There we go. So we've got a model definition. This is the basic one. The test is still going to fail because it's going to be looking for a referring user, and now that doesn't exist. So we're getting really close. We can compare this to, let's compare this to the account models. So there's got to be foreign key in here somewhere, which is what I want. And we'll take this and plop it here. And you can see that this is it's now setting up a foreign key. It's going to the auth user model, which is one way to refer to the Django user model in case you've changed it and customized it, which I have for this application. So we can say from Django conf import settings to get access to the model name. On the deletion of the user, so let's say some user says, I really am not happy with School Desk. I want you to delete my account and I want all of my data gone. Then we want to have the behavior of that deletion also delete the referral, so there are no referrals left behind. And then finally, this related name plus thing says that you can't do a backlink from the user to a referral. And I don't know that I actually want that. I think I might want to be able to reference that. So it'd be nice to be able to say, instead of plus, let's change it to referrals. To use the longer name. And yeah, that's really not getting a lot of room on this stuff. Okay. And space it out. Okay, now we've got the three files that are all kind of working in tandem with each other. And we just need to change this thing to be the referring user. So now this test should still fail, actually, because, yeah, this test is actually wrong in a number of ways. So this is going to be not none. And the reason it's going to be not none is that we want this foreign key constraint to always have a value. You cannot create a referral without it pointing back at the person who created it. And to do so, to create a referral without a referring user is a mistake. It doesn't make any sense. So there's not this is not a field that has null equal true, I guess is what I'm getting at. It always has a value. And now this test is correct in what it's checking, but it's still going to fail because it's when the factory call tries to create it, we haven't instructed it on what to do. So it's trying to create a referral with no user because it doesn't know how to. And Django is throwing an integrity error that says, nope, you can't do that because that's a database thing that you cannot violate. So we have to instead come in here, and I'm going to again borrow from another one that we already have and create a subfactory call, do a subfactory call. And what that's going to do is when the factory encounters this for referring user and sees that it doesn't have a value, then it's going to call out to the subfactory, which is a user factory, to create a referral. So now we have all of the pieces that we need to run this test, and the test passes. Hooray. Okay, let's move on to the next bit here. We want a created date. I don't think it needs to be a date time. I don't think I need to get that specific. When I do any logic, if I ever get down to expiration, I'm going to want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Like, I could foresee a referral expiring after some time duration, but I don't want to split hairs and be like, you didn't get the referral because it expired at this time of day, and that's just dumb. So a date should be perfectly adequate in terms of granularity. And I'm sure I have instances of something called created in here. I do. So this has created date, created at. I'll try and be consistent with some of these things. We'll use created at to have the same thing. So we'll say we want to assert that the referral created at is not none. Again, that test is going to fail because that field doesn't exist. But now we can go add it. And we're going to add it here. And like I said, I don't need this to be a date time. I need this to be a date. It should be totally adequate. But what I don't remember is if the date field has AutoNowAdd or not. So let's look that up. Okay, it does. It just has a different meaning. This is why it confused me. Okay, so they're giving you ways to get out of this if you want. So AutoNowAdd, automatically set the field to now when the object is first created, useful for creation of timestamps. Note that the current date is always used. It's not just a default value that you can override. Yep. So even if you set a value for this field when creating the object, it will be ignored. If you want to be able to modify this field, set the following instead of AutoNowAdd. Date today. Okay. That's interesting. Why? Okay. Is that accurate enough? Probably. I'm just wondering about the time zone math, like here. So timezone.now is like localized for a specific timestamp. And time date today could potentially be the time of the server, not localized. Am I getting that right? Python date time. So let's find today. So this is based, the today call is based on time.time, which is local to the particular server. In contrast, so I guess what I'm getting at is let's say, I'm running the service on Heroku, which is in the US. And let's say that somebody from Europe signs up for School Desk. And the time that they happen to sign up, or the time that they happen to create a referral, is in the next day. So like somewhere in the time range between time zones in the US and the time zones in Europe, the day is ticked over. What would happen in this scenario is if they create a referral, then the referral date would actually be for, it wouldn't be localized to when they really created it, when it was intended to be created. It would be localized to the time of the server, which I don't think is right. So I think what I want to do instead, Django has the TimeZone utilities, and TimeZone has a bunch of things in it. There is, I think it's local time is what I'm looking for. I know it's in here. So there's now. I really thought, well, this is for a super old version. It's for Django 1.8. I thought there was like local date or something. There is something that I use for dates. And I think I've got it. Where's an example of where I can find it? So I think it's on the user's model file. Local date. So there's a local date call. So the local date would then avoid that issue of basing a date time on whatever was calculated by that offset. So like if that person creating a referral in the different day from the server running, then I think this would be more accurate. I'm not sure why it doesn't show up in this source code file. Like it's definitely here somewhere. There it is. Convert an aware date time to a local time. But notice that if you don't provide a value, what it does is it traces back to local time, and if that doesn't have a value, then it's going to use the current time, so timezone.now as the starting point. So this is the way to get a time zone aware date that I know of in Django. And we're going to use that. So instead of using AutoNowAdd, we're going to instead bring in TimeZone. So from Django.utils.import TimeZone, and we'll say default is equal to TimeZone.localDate. That should give us the behavior that I think that we really want. And so now, if we run the test, it gets a default value, and that default value, let's say, what if you set it equal to empty string? Because that's going to be wrong. So the date should be, ooh, interesting. So timezone.now. Okay, I see how this, yeah, I remember how this works now. In the absence of any time zone information, the Django system, at least in my application, is configured to use UTC. So I'm doing this recording at 9:50 in the evening in Eastern time in the US. So UTC is actually in tomorrow. So that's why it's reading as 5/27, even though today's date for me still is 5/26. In my application, I'm using a time zone detection app that if a real user was to interact with this, it would be picking their local time zone. So when the local date call happens, it will be localized to their stuff. So it makes sense for the test that showed as tomorrow, but I understand the behavior. So we've got the created at, and then we need to get to the status stuff. And here is where I want to refer to the notifications app, which already has status as well. And we can borrow from that pretty heavily. So the notification status, there's the announcement. So here's what I wanted to really capture. So we really want something akin to this. And I think what I want to do, there's something I want to change while I'm here. I thought it would be a good idea to have a class like refer to the model as well in this, but in practice what I see in the code whenever I do this is it would look something like, in the announcement case, it would look something like announcement dot announcement status and then dot pending or whatever. And that looks lame. That looks pretty terrible, to be honest. So I think what I really want to do is instead just call it status. It's nested within the model, so I don't think I'm hurting myself by using that status. And Python's going to know what that is. And it just makes for shorter code too. So if we get rid of those things, then we've got this status here. Hey, Memories Dodo, welcome back. You can certainly ask again. I can't promise an answer, but I can try. So we've got pending, we've got sent. I do remember you. Hopefully you were able to get further in your understanding of Python after our discussion. We've got pending, sent, and then I said the last one that I want to put in the model is what? Converted. So this is the end state for when the user does something. So we've got a status field. I want to put that at the bottom because to me it's the least important thing of this. And then we want to assert that the referral status is equal to referral status pending. That's what I want a default referral to be in that state. Run the test. Test passes. So we didn't have to tell the factory to do anything with this in both of those last two cases because we provided a default value. So Django didn't need any extra instruction from the factory. It knew what to do just from the defaults that were configured. All right. So where does that leave us? We've got a new factory. You have a unit test. An empty data set error. It sounds like something is being called. So I'm not sure what you're hitting there. Maybe you could do a paste bin or something. We can check it out. I'm gonna run the tests. And with any luck, we shall be completely passing. Great. The other thing that we can do now is we now have this new application. So we need to make a new migration. That's one step that's required here. So we can do make migrations. So it's going to make an initial migration for that model. And we can go check out that migration. In fact, I need to because it needs to be reformatted. And this is the generated model stuff. It's got the ID field. It's got created at status and the foreign key. Let's check it out. what you got here? So you said you have a test, a unit test in here. Is it in this paste bin? I see some print, I see some stuff in here. Maybe you and I are referring to, oh, here's your unit test. Okay, so you got something, you're not talking about like Python unit test, you're talking about a function that you've created that you're calling your unit test. I see. Well, interesting. Is it this particular unit test at the bottom that's uncommented that you want to look at? Because there's a bunch of code in here. Okay. So your unit test is not, okay. This code, well, I don't know, maybe, was this self underscore data was something that you intended to have in your unit test? Because there's no self attribute here. This is just a function. And as we talked about methods last time, that's not gonna fly. So not really sure what you're referring to there. So maybe you can work on that while I continue on, and maybe give me a different paste bin. I'll take a closer look, and if you've got something more exact. I think if you tried to run this right now, it wouldn't even be, well, I guess it's commented out, so it wouldn't raise a problem there. Although this, I'm almost positive that Python is not going to like the fact that these are indented differently. Yeah. So give it another shot, and I'll take a look when you got something else up. The other thing I want to do is generate a new graph. Is it graph? Yep. So this is going to include the new Referrals app, which we should be able to take a peek at and see what it does. I wonder how that shook everything up. Okay, cool. It's actually a little bit more clear to me now how this is laid out. So you can see there's a lot of stuff connected to the user. That's unsurprising. And maybe, come on now, there we go. So here we've got the new referral model that's referring to this user that we use. And there's the reverse name is referrals, so that we can refer to the set of them if we so choose. And you can see that all of that stuff, just like account, it's all disconnected. It's unrelated to, this is the core domain up here, which I've walked through this part many times with all the relationship with school year and stuff. We don't need to cover this today. It's good that this could grow if I needed it to, and have other models in the referrals. It just kind of keeps it scoped to making this really clear of what this is for. Yeah, that feels pretty good to me. Now we have the migration. Let's make sure it runs with coverage. And I think that would complete this particular issue if that's all working. So that's the core like data model for this project. The next bit of it is to actually get into the template work and the form work to make this referral system work. Oh, I guess we can also have, what else do we need in here? We need some documentation. That's going to be important. Yep. So document referral system. Referrals, the referral process needs an explanation of details. So that's one thing. The other thing I do is on the application itself, I have a Hugo blog that is something that I'm doing for like content marketing. It's basically like pure updates about the product to think of from a marketing perspective. So as people start to discover the application, as I share it more, and they're digging in and trying to find stuff, and I know that I've done this myself as someone who's trying to do research of other projects, that I write up, these are not long things, but kind of explaining, here's this feature that I've added. This also is the feature that we were actually pulling a lot from, the announcement model. There's a notification model, so there's an in-app notification that actually can link out to product blog posts. So that will be a channel that I can notify active users of this referrals are now a bit built and available. But in order to do that, I have to have a product blog to actually share. So that's something else that we would need to add to this. So we'll come over here and we will additionally do product blog post on referrals. That will explain the benefit and pitch it as like what they will get, and just show that, I've been thinking about how people can share. Looking at your question here, Memories Dodo. So your data set, you have a data set class. Let me show you over here. So you had something like class data set, if I recall. And it had some stuff in it. I'm just going to put a pass to make that complete syntax. To create an instance of your data set, you could do data set equal data set. I don't, in your note there, I'm not sure what when you're calling something my set with data set, I don't know what that's referring to. So I'm not really sure. But that's how you would instantiate the data set class. And then whatever methods you've defined on the data set, do stuff, whatever those methods were, that's how you then call them. All right. So still 100% coverage. That's good stuff. We've modified some files here. Okay, here's another thing. Yeah, you're welcome. Another thing I forgot. So we have referrals, and then I didn't hook up the admin. So that's useful. We should come in here, and we should say admin register referral, and we need a class of a referral admin, which is going to subclass model admin. And let's just give it a pass for now. And the admin is, so the model is the same directory. So we're going to do a relative import, and we'll say referral. All right, so this should now be enough for the referral admin to display things. I do want to do one more. Let's bring up the account admin. We want to show a few things. I want to show the ID. I actually want, okay, I really want all of these. Those are good changes. Because this is similar in a lot of ways to the account, at least in what's there. And then we need to add on referring user to make it accurate for this particular model. So this is going to say, you know what, let me just show you. So we've got a new admin page. Let's do a migrate command. All right. Apparently I had another thing that hadn't migrated. And we can start this up again. Come back over to the local site, and we'll go to the Django admin site. On here now, at the bottom, here's referrals. There are no referrals yet, but you can see, so the code has the list filter. That's what's over here on the side. You can see it's by status. That was what we said. So I could look at different referrals in the future if I needed to. They're pretty much, unless they convert, they're going to almost always be sent. Unless there's a problem with the email system, email sending, so they get stuck at pending, or they're sent. The list display is you're only going to see this after I create a referral. So this lookup table, that's because I did raw ID fields. If I didn't do this, this would be a drop down. In fact, let's comment it out and refresh the page. This would be a drop down of every user. If you have thousands of users or millions of users, that will make this page impossibly slow. So by using the raw ID fields, you switch it to a simplified box, and then if you need to actually look up a particular user, you can use the little filter tool here and find somebody. I can say, let's pick Maddie here. Picks the date for today. Again, it detects, so note that it detected the time zone. It's not saying 5:27 here, it's saying 5:26, which is my current date. And then the status, initial status is pending. So once we save that, it's now going to show what we have is marked as the list displayed of the ID, the referring user, and the status. So it does that by saying the user's username and the status. And then we could filter in and like not see the pending stuff. Cool. So we've got our admin. Let's add all that. Black failed because it needs to do some more cleanup. And iSort also cleaned up some stuff, moved things around. We can try it again. Pre-commit does a lot of stuff to clean up the code, which is nice. And so we want to say add referral model. And this fixes number 397. Push that up. Okay. Let's think. So, look, doing a time check. We've been doing this for about an hour and 15 minutes or so. I think that probably is about what my brain can handle this evening. So what have we done? We've got a fully fleshed out feature that we can do for future streams here. And or if I might do some of these pieces offline. There's no promise that I do every single stream of every bit of functionality on the stream, because sometimes I get ahead of myself and have some motivation. But this is probably one that might end up on the stream here. And yeah, that's just how it'll pan out likely. And we scoped out what is in this feature. We've figured out what we want that to look like. And now we have a baseline here of there is a data model that we can attach to. We created the migration for it, created a new app. We saw it on the diagram. And then we have all of not only the actual work that's going to go into this, but then I've captured here the documentation and the product marketing too. So those are going to be important elements that will help people be aware of this feature. So like if you write a feature for a SaaS app and you never tell anybody about it, well, how are they might stumble across it. They might go to the settings page and be like, oh, okay, there it is. There's this feature to refer somebody. But that's not very good for discovery. So sometimes it helps to just hold people's hand a little bit and guide them along, tell them, hey, this is something that you can use to share this with others, and have at it. So we will next time most likely pick up on the actual process of creating the form, creating the view that will send this, There needs to be a little bit of email validation, but we might defer to some HTML5 validation there. There's probably some other stuff that could go in there. Again, I'm trying to avoid the temptation of gold plating, which is just a term to mean like doing too much, making it too fancy. And so there's stuff about like limits of, each time somebody uses this, they're going to be sending out an email. And so should there be a cap on how many referrals that you could do? Like you don't want to, I'm going to be paying for sending emails, assuming that I get more traction and have like regular email usage, and that has cost. So I don't want somebody to just like, I want to try and make money or save money on this service, and I'm going to email everybody in my Google contacts list or something like that. That would be bad. But I don't have that problem today, and I don't think I need to look that far into the future. Again, this is something I could react to on real customer behavior in the future. So if the system goes live and it started getting really heavy use, and then I noticed a pattern of abuse, then there'd be like, oh, whoa, I need to pay attention. But that's not today. So that's not where we're at. So we're going to do this like the simplest feature. Oh, good. Glad you solved your problem. Sometimes, have you heard of the notion of a rubber duck? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. And I don't remember who popularized it. But there's rubber duck program debugging. I think Jeff Atwood, maybe. Pragmatic Programmer. Okay. So it's just an amusing little anecdote. There you go. And rubber duck debugging is basically the idea of plop up a little rubber duck. It doesn't have to be a rubber duck, but something, and use that as a sounding board and talk your problem out. Sometimes that process of talking the problem out is enough to help you solve it, because it causes your brain to think in different ways and stuff. And in this scenario, like I guess I did add a little bit that a rubber duck could not have done. I don't know if that helped you or not, but you said you solved it yourself. So it might be in a scenario where had you had a little rubber duck above your computer and asked it a question or two, you might have gotten your brain juices going there and solved it yourself. I'm happy to help you, don't get me wrong, but that's just an interesting thing to know that sometimes you'll hear in the software industry is rubber duck debugging. This is an excellent book, by the way. If people are interested in a good book, Pragmatic Programmer is one of my top. It's probably in the top 5 of all the programming books that I've read that have really shaped me as a software developer. This is a solid one, so I would definitely recommend it if you're interested. Okay. Okay. Automate the boring stuff. That's a really good one too. That is one that I recommend consistently to people who are wanting to get in there. It's especially good for if you don't have a project in mind. Like it looked like you got your data set thing. I don't know if it's a homework assignment for you or if that's a project that you're just interested in. But some people are like, I want to learn to code, and they don't have a plan. And they just want to learn it purely from an academic point of view. And I have often said to those kind of folks of like, find a project, because the benefit of finding a project, finding something you care about, is that when you encounter something hard, and you will encounter something hard. Programming is hard, or it can be hard, especially for beginners. If you don't have a project and you're learning purely for an academic reason, maybe you're a great academic student and you can power through it. But many people are not, right? And so those coming from a purely academic point of view will just give up. There's not a lot of reason to keep going. But if you have a project that you're trying to push through, and you now have this like roadblock of understanding in your way, then that project becomes an additional reinforcement or a motivator to get you over that hump. So automate the boring stuff is really good in that regard of it's trying to equip you with tools that you could then, if you have a data processing job or some kind of work that is office work that is really unfulfilling, you could find ways to use Python and stuff to make your work better and actually do stuff. So good on you for reading that book. It's definitely a good one. There's a lot to learn there. The first third of it, I think, kind of covers the language. And then the next 2/3 are kind of projects and skills that you can pick up that are pretty cool. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining in. I'm going to take this content, post it up on YouTube. So if you want to go back and refer to anything, please do. Next time we will dig into probably the call to action and the actual form and get it as far as creating the referral, which will then do the work of kicking off this email sending and stuff, but I doubt we'll get to the actual referral email content. I'm most interested in getting the actual ability to send a form. So anyway, hope that was useful to you. I hope you learned a little bit about design. Have a great evening. Take care.